Roger, in trying to understand the nature of reality and particularly human consciousness, there are these new thoughts that come up. Transcendence, enlightenment, at least new to me, and altered states of consciousness. In the last several decades, these have become all studied. How do I make sense out of this? How would you, as a scientist, define each of these and their interrelationships?
Well, as you said, they're not new concepts. In fact, they're some of humankind's most ancient. The idea of transcendence, that we can go beyond our current ways of being, is an ancient one, and I think we can understand that as growth or development, psychological development and growth. Altered states of consciousness are different states of mind in which we see differently and feel differently. For example, states in which we feel great peace or calm or feel intensely focused, times in which we lose ourselves into what we're doing, times of ecstasy. These are all altered states. Orgasm, of course, is the one that most people know and seek most. So these can be very powerful and very attractive. Then, of course, the big one is, what do we mean, but what does this term enlightenment mean? It's very intriguing that this has been enlightenment or liberation or salvation, satori, nirvana. These have been the quest of sages over thousands of years in every culture. And yet we're only just beginning to appreciate what they are. So what have we found? Well, I think there are a couple of ways we can begin to understand that. One is developmentally. One of the great discoveries of recent decades in psychology has been the recognition that adults can continue to grow, that our usual adult condition of when we reach 20, that we can mature psychologically. We don't have to stop growing when the body stops growing. That there are potentials and capacities and actual stages of development that we as adults can mature to. And one of the great recognitions in our study of contemplative and spiritual traditions has been that these traditions have techniques and practices designed to do that. So one way of us beginning to understand enlightenment is that it is referring to the upper reaches of psychological development, the farther potentials of our psychological and spiritual possibilities. So that's one kind of...
What are some characteristics of that state of enlightenment?
Well, first off, we don't even know if there's one state. We're just beginning. So probably there are a variety of different experiences and states and stages. But classically, some of the qualities have been described as, for example, greater positive emotions, greater love and compassion, intellectually greater insight and understanding, both into the nature of reality and into the nature of ourselves. Then there has been a sense of openness, of interconnection and even unity with the world, the so-called classical mystical experience. And out of that identity or sense of union, interconnection with other people, naturally comes a sense of care and compassion and love. So one claim has been that out of direct experience of our interconnection, there is naturally born a desire to care for others. And the ancient wisdom to love your neighbor as yourself now makes total sense from direct experience. So that's one way of understanding these. But there's another classic image, which is I love, it's just so beautiful. The Indian traditions describe our condition by analogy to a lake. And imagine you come to a lake when the wind is blowing and you look into the lake and you see these ripples and shimmering lights and a kaleidoscope. And you think, well, that's beautiful, and you can measure the way the waves are going and you can see how high they are, and it's all fascinating and wonderful and interesting. But then imagine, first off, let me just say that the lake is a metaphor for our minds. So now imagine you come back to the lake on a day when the wind has died down and it's very calm. And now to your amazement, you can see down into the depths of the lake and see creatures and things you never even guessed were there. just the way a contemplative can see deep into the mind when it becomes calm and clear. And at the same time, you see yourself and the entire world, entire universe reflected in that lake and see it as part of an interconnected whole. That's the kind of vision that the spiritual contemplative traditions tell us is available to us all when we concentrate and calm and clear the mind through some sort of sustained disciplined practice.
Let's take each of these terms and see how they may interrelate to each other. Enlightenment and transcendence. Does transcendence mean just something beyond myself? Whereas enlightenment requires some of these more positive, emotive experiences. So is enlightenment a subset of transcendence, or is enlightenment the means by which you become transcendent?
Well, I'd say the other way around, that transcendence may be the way we become enlightened.
Okay.
And yes, transcendence is a more general term. In some ways, it's a synonym for growth. When we grow, we transcend or go beyond our previous way of being. Just as adults, we've gone beyond, little kids' toys and so forth. And
that's a more general use, although isn't the more specific use being transcendent, meaning something beyond myself, beyond my personal ego, body, mind that I'm relating to?
Certainly can be. That's certainly one way it's used, that there are a whole family of transcendent experiences or states of mind in which we go beyond our former identity, which we recognize that this sense of me as being locked in this body is actually a very limited way of looking at things, and that we can move to a transcendent state of identity in which we begin to appreciate we're intimately connected with everyone and with the universe.